Hi, and welcome back to the second day of NCAA Diversity and Inclusion Week. I am here with...
Hi, my name is Janega. I'm a sophomore here at Edgewood. I'm a part of the men's basketball team, and I'm a biology major. And I'm here with...
I'm Anna Blake. I'm the Athletic Communications Graduate Assistant, and I played softball in college. I was talking to Anthony one day because he's one of the student workers at the soccer matches, and he mentioned that he was Filipino, and over time we've had a few conversations about that because I'm also Filipino, and so we just wanted to share a little bit about our heritage and a little bit about what it's like to be a student athlete who is Filipino. So tell us a little bit about your background and stuff like that.
So yes, I am half Filipino. My grandma was actually born in Manila, and then she moved to the States when she was about 6, and then she actually moved to Chicago, where I'm from, and then she moved to LA for high school, and then she moved back to Manila after high school, went to college, and then became a stewardess there at a Manila airport. And then after that, she kind of moved back to Chicago, became like a U.S. citizen around 1977. Her father was actually a Filipino diplomat, so that's why she was always traveling around. She moved to Australia for a little bit, so she was always traveling around.
Yep, so my grandmother also came to the United States. She moved here to attend college, and she actually didn't know any English, didn't speak any English, and taught herself, and actually ended up becoming an English professor. She lived in Washington State for a while, had my father in the Philippines. She got married back in the Philippines, so she moved here, went back to the Philippines, got married, and then moved back here when my father was about 1 year old. And they lived in Washington State for a while. They lived in Ohio for a really long time, which is where my father did most of his growing up.
Yep. So one thing we kind of touched on before we started filming this is actually how we don't see a lot of professional Filipino athletes. There are very few of them, like 2 of them right now that everyone probably knows: Manny Pacquiao, the famous boxer, and then there's an NBA player who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers named Jordan Clarkson. So kind of give us your little thoughts on Filipinos and professional athletes.
Even in my family, my dad played sports, but it wasn't a huge part of his life. And so for me, the decision to become a collegiate athlete was super huge. And in softball, there's really not that many people on the national, stage who are Filipino. There's just really not a lot of representation for me personally. And so I guess a lot of the people who I look up to in the softball world aren't necessarily of my own heritage or relate to me in many ways.
Yeah. For me personally, I know my grandma is a really big basketball fan. Basketball is really big out in the Philippines. My dad played up until high school, and so when I decided I wanted to take it to the next level, play in college, my grandma was super ecstatic. She always came to all my games, supporting. I actually do play in a Filipino basketball league over the summer. We travel around. We've been to Washington, D.C., Canada, and play other Filipino teams from around Europe, Canada, California. So basketball, for basketball, it's always been a big sport in the Philippines. It's kind of cool to see, Jordan Clarkson, for an example, being a Filipino basketball player, making it to the NBA. So I've always thought that was kind of interesting.
Kind of stereotypes about Filipinos, and
yes.
And I guess in my opinion, there's not necessarily as many as them being general Asian stereotypes. Yeah. But what do you think is 1 or 2 that stick out to you?
I kind of have to agree with you. There's not I don't think there's a lot of them. There's always the general Asian stereotypes of being a little short on the shorter side, stuff like that.
Oh, you defy that.
Yes, that's what a lot of people don't understand is when I tell them I'm Filipino, I'm 6'4", 6'5", so it doesn't kind of add up to them. But yeah, those are the few that I see personally from around where I grew up. I grew up in went to a very diverse high school, so I was kind of just immersed into all different types of cultures.
Yeah, I think you're right about being immersed in a lot of cultures. My grandparents never taught me, never taught their children. So my father, Tagalog. There's many languages in the Philippines, but that's the one that she spoke. And I think a big part of that was just wanting to assimilate so quickly to the culture in America.
Yep.
And so it's something that I missed out on, and I kind of wish that I learned when I was growing up.
What was kind of the biggest transition from going from high school sports to college, whether that was just the play style, new teammates, or did being Filipino ever have problem with that?
I think originally at first being Filipino didn't really impact my transition from high school to college. I think it really took me a while to realize how special it was to be a multicultural student athlete. But I also feel really privileged to have grown up in a world where like a lot of my friends who were student athletes were multicultural and very diverse in many ways. So I really felt quite accepted.
Also, my senior year, I was kind of injured for half the year, so that was also kind of like my biggest, I wouldn't say problem, but like transition coming in to college was the style of play. I grew up on my basketball team. There was also a lot of multicultural athletes, so coming here was no exception. They all welcomed me with open arms. I mean, everyone is all best friends off the court, so I thought that was pretty cool coming here to Edgewood.
But something I wonder from your perspective is, do you ever think that like being Filipino or being Asian American has like impacted like your willingness to discuss, you know, mental illnesses or like maybe like problems or struggles, or has that been easy for you?
I mean, it's like I'm a pretty open-minded person. Like being Filipino, like I embrace it. I'm comfortable with who I am. So, I mean, with stuff like this, what we're doing right now, I'm really like excited, like to talk about my culture and my heritage and my family backgrounds. Kind of learn from other people's perspectives who come from the same background as I do.
I think it's really exciting when you get to talk to someone who shares similar background and understanding about where you come from, and like you said, excitement about that.
Yeah.
We will have 2 more videos after this, and we challenge all of our student athletes to continue to share and tweet, repost, and comment on all of our videos and share a little bit about yourself and what makes you special as a Division III athlete.